the ball field in baseball and or finance? Sports or finance, is that fair?
Yeah, I would hope that maybe I'm known for a few other things, but, we take whatever we can get in this world, right?
That's right.
Baseball and finance and a family guy, maybe.
That's right. Judah, we will get cracking when you're ready. We can start the program. Just let us know what the game plan. Good Tuesday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk. This is an insider's guide to real estate life and the pursuit of happiness. We're presented by the Yes Team Realtors and Yes Realty Partners. Guys, we are live in Charlottesville, across Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love Seville network. This program on any social media platform possible, and of course archived on iloveseville.com. I'm extremely excited for this show. We will welcome some known commodities in this community. Michael Guthrie will join us in a matter of moments via Skype. And folks, before we get to Michael Guthrie, let's welcome Jeff Burton to the program. Judah Wickhauer, if we can start with the studio camera, please. He's our director. Jeff, you are on set, on camera, and live for the world. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure. Like I said, kind of in the show tease, in the leading up to the show, so many folks have reached out and said, Jeff Burton, get him on the show, talk about what he's doing at the ball field here. Before we go down that road, how about who is Jeff Burton, the man first?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. We really appreciate you having us here. I've lived in this town for a lot of years, came here to go to the University of Virginia, and like many people, I just wanted to come back and live here, raise my children. My wife and I have been married for 25 years and lived here for most of those years. So we're just trying to find ways to help this community, whether it's through finance, which is what I make my living doing, and projects like this Burley project.
We're going to go down the road of the Burley project. How about the history first of you in Charlottesville? How you met your wife?
Yeah.
Why don't we start there? Let's highlight the beautiful better half here.
My wife and I met at the University of Virginia. We were both involved in an on-grounds ministry together, and 3 years later we were married. I came here as a baseball player back in 1988. The University of Virginia baseball program was a lot different in 1980s than it is today.
Coach Womack?
Coach Womack was my coach.
Okay.
Yeah, actually. Three of my coaches are still living in the Charlottesville area, but have nothing to do with the University of Virginia.
Who? Okay, so Coach Womack.
Coach Womack. The athletic director at Western Albemarle is Steve Heon.
I know Steve well.
He was one of my assistants, and Dan Maynard, who lives out in the Western Albemarle area too. He raised a tremendous baseball player named Jack, who's playing professionally right now. So 3 of the 4, and the 4th was Sammy Beal.
I know Sammy.
We just lost Sammy.
Rest in power.
So, wonderful man.
Mr. Baseball, formerly the coach at the Miller School.
That's right.
Had a mitt for a handshake, and anytime you were around Sammy Beal, you were like, this dude just has a zest for life.
Yeah.
I love being around him. Throw this to you. Was the Maynard you mentioned kin to Mike and Darren and Greg, or no?
He's not.
Okay.
In this town, it's a good question to ask. The Maynards have influenced sports in Central Virginia for many, many years.
Especially in the Jefferson District and the Commonwealth District.
Yeah. I was a private school baseball coach for a lot of years. I never really faced off against those guys, but I did against Sammy Beal. So anyway, love Sammy.
What was that? Let's talk about that. That's where I first met you, was the ball field. And I had many conversations when you were the coach at Covenant.
Yes.
Why get in with coaching? I mean, you're a behind-the-scenes guy with tremendous influence with the sport. Why go in the dugout and be a skip?
Well, I'm not sure I'd do it again.
It's hard, right?
I say that. I mean, just to be in the big chair, as you know, is difficult at times. I had known over the years the longtime legendary coach at the Covenant School named Doug Smethers.
I love Doug.
Doug had a very difficult time leaving Covenant because he was Covenant athletics as well as Covenant baseball. And Doug called me one day. I was coaching a bunch of high-level youth athletes at the time, and he said, I want you to give some thought to whether or not you want to be a high school coach, because I would love for you to coach the program that I've built for the last 20 years. And it took 6 to 8 weeks to convince my beautiful bride that it was an effort worth jumping into, but I had a great experience. In fact, this morning, a 4-year anniversary picture popped up on my Facebook link. we had in 2017, we had 6 seniors on that small Covenant team. All 6 are starting their senior years playing for college baseball programs right now. So it was a great 4-year run. I loved it. I got to coach my own son, my oldest son, who's now down at Davidson College. But I also was ready to move on when it was time to move on.
I love Doug Smithhurst. First met him when he was working the sidelines as the boys basketball coach at Covenant.
Wow.
And then at spring season, I'm like, Doug, you're the athletic director, the boys basketball coach, and the baseball coach, and you have a way with everybody in this community. He was like that soft talker that was always positive.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, he wasn't going to take no for an answer
No.
when he asked me to be his coach
Right,
either,
right.
by the way. He knew before I knew.
Right. He's the most persuasive guy, used no profanities ever, was a
Yes,
soft
yeah.
talker, but never knew the word no.
That is a real skill to be able to soft talk your way into influencing other people.
He's in the Hall of Fame
100%.
with that skill.
100%.
We'll get to Michael Guthrie here, the CEO of Roy Wheeler, in a matter of moments. Before we do, let's highlight what the community is talking about, this philanthropic effort that you're doing.
Yeah, so back in the fall, we were having a work day, as we are apt to do with some middle school, young high school age kids that I've coached, or I'm coaching right now. We were using the Burley field. We decided that our kids needed to understand the history of a segregated Burley high school from the 1950s to 70s. We found the phone number of the president of the Burley Varsity Club, a man by the name of Jimmy Hollins. Jimmy was a football player at Burley back in the day, and he and a buddy of his, Duck Byers, who for years was an Albemarle County police officer, came out and spoke to our kids. For an hour, my kids were captivated by these men and the project that they had embarked on prior to us even getting involved. So at the end of that particular day, we decided we were going to jump in and help them finish a project that was so important to them. And it's changed a lot in the last 4 or 5 months, but we couldn't be more pleased to be involved.
We got the hat tip to Charlottesville's finest that's driving by our studio there on Market Street. We respect what you guys do for this community, Charlottesville Police Department.
Yes, we do.
I love it, man. How did this get on the radar? What's the next step? We got to do we got to raise some money here? We got to get some awareness here.
We do, and really that's what I got involved to do. I'm a baseball coach, and having baseball facilities in this town that are usable by youth and in the town is important. But what's really important to me is preserving the legacy of these men. So what we jumped in to do was to finish the projects that they had identified. They had identified that in the 1950s, you could see from Burley High School through to Washington Park, up onto Madison Road into Henry Road, you could see a beautiful facility with brand new bleachers, a brand new playing surface, some buildings that had fresh coats of paint. Their goal was to bring that facility back to what they remembered in the 1950s and 60s. And so what we've done at this point in time is we've raised money to get them across the finish line on those projects. And then we've added some projects that we think are additive to the overall project.
Cool aspect of this program, guys, in this format is you can type some commentary to Jeff Burton, give him some props. You can give him some love. You can heckle Jeff Burton a little bit here.
There are a lot of hecklers out there.
So far, he's 2 for 2. He's hit a double, a triple, and driven in 3 runs, okay? Let's see what he does for the rest of the game.
Yeah,
Jack Marshall giving you some props.
Love Jack. I started coaching Jack when he was 9 years old.
He's watching right now.
There you go. Love you, Jack.
Byron
Congrats
Harris,
on your first hit the other day.
Brian Harris is watching right now. Welcome to the program, guys. You got 4 states watching you right now. Barbara Lundgren, welcome to the show. All right, let's talk baseball in this community.
Sure.
So I have not as much perspective to offer as you, but some.
Yes.
Mention off air, my first job out of school, out of UVA, was as a sports writer under Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe.
Yes,
Working
Jerry.
with Chris Wright.
Yes.
With Jay Jenkins, with Andrew Joyner, with Whitelaw Ree, with John Shiflett. This was when the sports department was really good.
Yes.
This is when it was Media General and not Buffett's company or
Yes.
Lee Enterprises now.
Right.
So we had a strong commitment to
Yes.
sports. Jefferson District, man. I mean, you got Skip at Western. Okay, I grew up at the time when Alan Swanson was coaching over at Stav, and this dude was producing ballers.
That's
I
right.
mean, my boy Brian Yago comes out of St. Anne's Belfield over there.
Love
Kyle
Brian.
Long was hitting bombs over there.
Some legendary bombs.
I mean, bombs that went like 150 beyond the fence.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
This
he is 6'7" and 260 pounds, right?
And he was that at 17.
That's right.
At 17, Jeff Burton. How about Mike Maynard with the post-74 team, the Legion team?
Absolutely
right?
legendary.
So baseball,
best in the state.
Okay, so I'll throw this in. Baseball is woven into the fabric of Central Virginia. Can you give us some perspective on that topic?
Yeah, so here Jack Marshall's watching. I took Jack Marshall down to Abingdon, Virginia in what would that have been? That would have been like 2010. And we had a phenomenal team out of Charlottesville, and we got absolutely smoked from a team from Northern Virginia. I think it was 21-1. Our starting shortstop is none other than Nick Kent, who's starting at shortstop for UVA right now.
Brian Kent's son.
Brian Kent's son.
I played pickleball with Brian Kent. Make sure you tell Brian Kent
He is very good at pickleball.
Dude, he is so freaking competitive, has such quick hands, Brian Kent.
He is
Someone
good.
Tell Brian Kent we're talking about him
And
here.
he throws a heck of a knuckleball, though he just had shoulder surgery.
He's on the DL. He's recovering.
He just had shoulder surgery. My point to that story was we learned real quickly that this is a big world out there. And as good as UVA has gotten, as good as McIntyre might be, as good as the Maynards have made baseball, or Corey Hunt, or Skip Hudgens, or Doug Smethurst, or Billy Wagner, or Sammy Beal, some of these great coaches, this is a big world out there. And what we needed to do was to prepare our kids for something bigger than what they could see. And so we created an H3 baseball at the time that was designed to bring kids from all over Central Virginia, across school and league boundaries, into a superstar team that ultimately could go out and compete with kids from Northern Virginia, or East Cobb, Georgia, or Jupiter, Florida. And Jack Marshall was part of that group. So was Nick Kent. So was Ethan Murray, who's at Duke. So was Adam Hackenberg, who's down at Clemson. Some wonderful kids. And what we think we did was we filled in a gap. We took something that was good and we think we pushed it to something a little better, maybe something a little more towards excellence. Those kids have now been turned over to some wonderful college coaches. And, to boot, we've added the Charlottesville Tom Sox to this area. We've supported University of Virginia baseball, which has transformed itself under Brian O'Connor's leadership over the last 16 years. So Charlottesville baseball is fantastic at so many levels. And all we are trying to do is do a little part to push it to be even a little bit better.
I love it. This guy's got comments coming in. Carrie Rock. Dude, this is good.
Is she related to Chris?
It's a gentleman. So Carrie Rock is he and his wife this is actually a potential partnership for you guys.
Sure.
They are the founders of Do Good Seville.
Oh, wow.
And every quarter, their nonprofit finds a community mission to rally around.
Yeah.
And they host events to raise money for that nonprofit. So you got the founder of Do Good Seville watching you talking about your Burley project. And he says, is there anything a local community member like myself can do to help this project?
That's a great question. And let me tell you this.
And I'll connect you guys off air.
Absolutely. So back to what we originally wanted to do. Last week, we had a man step forward with his big tractor equipment and clean out the woods that so desperately needed to be cleaned out around Burley. We have a local foundation of builders who are voting next month to completely restore the bleachers at Burley. Again, a priority project of the Burley Varsity Club. We have pushed the county, and we believe the county will redo the playing surface at Burley in the next 2 months. We just got a huge donation of paint to paint the facilities around Burley. If you went to Burley right now, you'd notice that there are 6 different buildings with 6 different color patterns. And for anybody that wants things to be excellent, you need a consistent color scheme around your property. So we've got lots of contributions coming in, but here's some pretty cool things that are getting ready to happen. We believe that we are on the verge of creating a Hall of Fame at Burley to black athletes of Central Virginia.
Oh, all right. This is a sizzle reel. So a sizzle reel is a highlight reel, almost like when you were playing baseball at UVA, and when you went yard and you were trotting around the base
very
pass.
often.
We capture that video and we play it on the 6 p.m. news. Let's turn what he's about to say, and why don't you start over so we can get a clean, turn this into a highlight clip that we can edit later. All right.
Sure. So here's what I'm going to say. So what we have realized is that the history of black athletes in Charlottesville, Virginia is rich, and we do not do enough to celebrate that. For those of you who don't know this, Burley was a segregated high school for not only Charlottesville, but Albemarle County, Greene County, Nelson County, surrounding areas in the 1950s, 60s, and early 70s. The Jefferson School was around at that point in time. But ultimately, the schools were integrated in the early 70s. What we want to do is we want to highlight some of these black athletes. Burley was their field. It was the mecca of high school sports on Friday nights in the 50s and 60s. Even the folks from the white community at Lane High School would come over to watch the legendary football team at Burley. So what we're desiring here is to build some kind of memorial to these athletes at Burley. As we restore their baseball field and the facility that surrounds it, what we want to do is to build a walk of fame that starts at the Burley property, cuts through the fence into Washington Park, and ultimately ends at the UVA's property right there at Preston and 14th Street. We've met with University of Virginia officials, we've hosted city councilors, we've hosted Albemarle County supervisors. Everybody seems to be in support of this project. So we've got some UVA folks involved that are helping us design this. I can tell you a little bit more about that if you'd like me to do that.
No, keep going. Oh my gosh, so I can get behind this project.
Okay,
here.
So I met about a month ago through University of Virginia, new executive director of the UVA Equity Center named Ben Allen. Ben is a wonderful man, PhD in education, doing some fantastic things in the community, way beyond in level of importance of what's going on at Burley. He has contacted two University of Virginia professors, Elgin Cheekley and Barbara Brown Wilson. They have a history of going into projects like this and designing things that have historical significance. But to add to that, what they often do will find the residents that are most affected by these projects, and they'll invite those residents into the planning and design process. So right now, Burley Middle School principals are identifying 15 to 20 Burley Middle School students. So these are 13 to 15-year-olds that are going to be in brainstorming sessions with University of Virginia architecture professors to design a Walk of Fame. This Walk of Fame will have placards that tell the story of segregation in the Rose Hill neighborhood, tell the story of Burley High School, tell the story of people like Roosevelt Brown, who played in this town and went on to a Hall of Fame career in the NFL. So we believe that not only will Central Virginia residents, but people will come from far and wide to walk the Walk of Fame that starts in Burley and connects into Booker T. Washington Park. So as people wonder how can they get involved, that planning process is going to take some money. That approval process is going to take some connections. Ultimately, we're going to have to fund it and build it, and we're going to need to build it on the backs of individual corporate and foundation folks in this town.
Well, that was a pretty darn good sizzle reel right there. Why don't you end that sizzle reel with what Jeff Burton just said? That was damn good, Jeff Burton.
Thank you.
That was really, really good.
I'm not known for being all that articulate, so
well,
I appreciate you.
I'll tell you what, Mrs. Burton, he's hitting a home run right now, and he's following that advice.
That's good.
That was fantastic.
Thank you.
And this is what I'd like to do.
Yes.
So we did, like I said off air, that telethon.
Yes.
And we raised a significant amount of money for the land trust.
Yes.
So they can purchase a piece of property off 10th and Page,
yes.
historically African-American community.
Yes.
And then they can take that piece of property and turn it into 5 units of affordable housing.
Wonderful project.
Why don't we try to figure out something similar for what you're doing? And what we can do is we can raise not only the money for the endeavor, but perhaps even as important is the awareness piece that's going to be associated with this. Because we're at a time here in Charlottesville where I think it's critically important for us to heal as a community post-August 12th, for us to identify our history.
Yes.
And for us to honor our history. And much of our history is an African-American history.
Yes.
And bringing that history to the forefront and spotlighting it and making it come see it.
That's right.
Which is what you're all about.
We're trying to build a field of dreams in at Burley rather than in the cornfield of Iowa. So at the end of the day here,
if you build it,
they will come.
They will come.
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, we needed to give the Burley Varsity Club $25,000 to finish their project back in September when we committed to this project. To date, we believe that we probably have $200,000 worth of contributions in cash or foundations that have indicated that they want to help us. So this project is tenfold what we started to do, and we have no idea where it's going to end, and that's pretty exciting to me. So a telethon at Burley Field on a pretty spring day, watching folks from a local foundation restore the bleachers and the buildings be painted, and kids working to
look
build.
At Jeff Burton
to
paint
build
a picture over here.
Look, I mean, these kids, inviting kids from that community. I've walked the neighborhood of Rose Hill and talked to residents about what's important to them. This is to them a memorial to everything that came before them.
Well, because it's an epicenter for community.
It really is. And look, it is a property often forgotten. People won't necessarily know this, but it is a county property in the heart of the city and on the footsteps of UVA. So it is a wonderful spot, an intersection of so much of what's going on in this community. And we just think we can make it bigger than anybody ever dreamed before. And the county, the city, county already has so many wonderful landmarks. This will just be another one.
You know what I love about, and I love this chat, and we're going to get Michael Guthrie in the mix. Olivia Branch is saying, Jeff Burton is a hero among us. Thank you for sharing your passion with this community, Jeff Burton. That's from Olivia Branch. Who's Jerry Burton? Is that your brother? Is that your family here?
Jerry is my younger brother.
Okay, Jerry Burton says, don't stroke this man's ego anymore. Where's Jerry Burton watching right now?
Jerry Burton is probably watching from his home office. Jerry is a legendary golfer, and he coaches with me. He's on my board.
He's locally?
Yeah, he's fantastic. And let me shout out to Olivia Branch. I first met Olivia when I was getting started in the investment business 20 years ago in Charlottesville, working with Gary Taylor over at Northwestern Mutual. Olivia is a rock star in this community.
She's such an evangelist.
There's nobody that is a bigger advocate for Central Virginia than Olivia Branch.
Dude, I completely agree with that, Olivia. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of Olivia Branch is champion and evangelist for Charlottesville and Central Virginia.
We need as many of those as we can get. And to your point of August 12th, 2017, here's what I think. I think this project would be done. We would have everything done that the Burley Varsity Club wanted done.
If it wasn't for COVID?
Not just that, but my point is, if August 12th hadn't happened, we would have built a nice facility and we would have restored the baseball field. But we wouldn't be dreaming bigger dreams than originally dreamed. And here's why. As I get out there and tell folks about what's going on in this community at Burley, I think people are looking for ways that they can make a contribution to the healing process.
100%.
Most of us believe we're not racist. We have great friends that do not look like us. They didn't grow up like us, but we do not know how to respond. And so when we do something like create a monument to people that came before us that didn't necessarily look like us, I feel like it's a way that people can tangibly respond to that. So as I got involved with Faulkner Construction and Allied Concrete and Bella Terra Landscapes and Piedmont Land Management and Cardinal Home Center and all these companies that have wanted to get involved in this project, I think what's happening is people are realizing this is a way that they can use their resources of time and money to make a difference in this community. Tangibly.
And the beautiful thing that you said earlier in the show, this was a segregated school that accommodated so many in Central Virginia. And then you said the white community came to the ball field to watch athletes perform because they were great athletes. And that's the beautiful thing about sports.
That's right.
And that's what we love about sports is if you can go to the box and you can hit a bomb, or if you can go to the box and hit a drag bunt down the third base line to advance the runner, or if you can hit a jumper from downtown, it doesn't matter what you look like.
It does not matter what you look like. And here's what I'll tell you.
And all we care about is we want to watch people perform at top levels.
That's right. And look, Jimmy Hollins and Duck Byers, the two men from the Burley Varsity Club with whom I've spent the most time, those guys don't care who's using the field that they built many, many decades ago. What they want to see is people utilizing the facility, right? So when I bring a group of youth out to that field and, those kids don't look like the Burley students of 1950s and 60s. Jimmy does not care. What Jimmy sees is people utilizing a facility that he holds in such high regard. So to me, look, you build a great facility in the Rose Hill neighborhood, right in the heart of the city. We've got people like James Pierce from the Boys and Girls Club that are involved with us, helping us write grants. We've got 8 different grant applications getting ready to go into places like Major League Baseball and their Fields of Tomorrow program, the Cal Ripken Foundation, the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation, the Perry Foundation, Truist Foundation. We've got people that are jumping in to help us write grants to bring more resources to bear at this facility. Major League Baseball loves to do lights at fields and take care of the playing surface. But the Perry Foundation, they want to build facilities. They'd love to build a Hall of Fame, we hope, right? So at the end of the day, we've got lots of people that want to jump in and help. What I'm trying to do is to keep the momentum going so that whatever our final destination is here, it's going to be bigger and better than we ever dreamed, than Jimmy Hollins ever dreamed. And we're going to look back at this place with pride, and then we're going to move on to the next place. But we're going to be better for it because we're going to understand the history of segregation in Burley in our community and the impact that it's had on us we might not even have been aware of.
You got NBC 29 and the Daily Progress watching you right now.
Thank you.
You have Jamie Lively giving you some props.
Jamie's great.
Nicholas Erpy, the family that owns Emergent Financial Services, just gave you props and shared the show. Ray Cadell, the musician,
Yes,
real
sure.
estate broker, shared the show. 2 media outlets watching you now. Let's get in another local legend, Michael Guthrie on the hotline over here.
If there's anybody that can rival Olivia Branch in this community,
it might
it's
be
Michael Guthrie.
It very well might be Michael Guthrie here. So you'll be able to hear him. We'll get him up here on this as well. We got Michael Guthrie on the line. Judah Wickhauer
on the hotline over here.
Michael,
If there's
that
anybody
speaker turned off on your end.
it might be Michael Guthrie.
That way we don't hear the reverb.
So you'll be able to hear him.
And if we can also get your camera turned on for us, Michael, and then we'll get you in the mix here with Jeff Burton and myself. Michael Guthrie is the Chief Executive Officer of Roy Wheeler Realty Company. Michael, you are live here and you are on the show. What do you make of what you're hearing so far? He helped set up this interview. He made this possible here. Michael Guthrie, Jeff Burton's effort in this community, everybody involved. What do you think?
I think, quite simply, my work is done here. My goal for this morning, when Keith and Yona asked me to facilitate the show, was to get 2 amazing nonprofits on the air for people to hear the incredible things that they're doing. Jeff and I have known each other for a long, long time. I've served on his board, not only with H3, but also bringing the Charlottesville Tom Sox to town. Nathan, Walton, and Abundant Life, I serve on their board. They're just doing amazing things, and it goes back to everything you guys have talked about this morning in regards to there are just so many people in this community that want to make a difference, that want to continue to make Charlottesville a wonderful place to live and to work, and these 2 organizations are doing it. And I think that the Burley Field renovation project is a great example of the fact that you've got a bunch of people that are wanting to make a difference. And Jeff is an empowerer in the fact that he has a vision and he moves forward that vision, but he has his arms wide open to bring in anybody that wants to play a role in it. And it's just been so much fun for me over these last few months since I heard about it to just chat with Jeff. We talked the other day, and I came up with a couple ideas that we hadn't really thought about, and just people that like Jody Mills, Blue Ridge Homebuilders Association, being the president, and now Dirk Kingma. They want to get involved. You got guys like David Sloan and the Z League softball team, Jerry, which is the over 40 league. Guys like Tony Zencraft, who played at UVA, and Steve McNerney, David Sloan, Joe Jenkins. They're just a bunch of folks that really want to have grabbed a hold of this thing and are helping Jeff open some other doors that maybe he couldn't have opened as quickly as they've been opened. So, like I said, I just feel so grateful that Keith and Yona gave me this opportunity, and these 2 organizations were were first and top of mind. And so I just want to get out of the way and let you finish with Jeff and make sure that Nathan gets his due as well.
Michael, you have been such a great friend and such a great mentor, and much like I was saying about Olivia a minute ago, you know everybody in town, and you're gracious about utilizing your talents to help good projects. And we are but one great project that's going on in this town. I was thinking recently about just some of the COVID efforts that are going on right now. What I do not want is this project to be taking money and resources away from things that are urgent and important. Stephen Covey's Quadrant 4, right? This project is extremely important, and the urgency is mainly because the men who I want to honor are in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah, you want to do it while they're still on the earth.
Mr. Hollins called me about a month ago. I was out for a Sunday morning walk, and Jimmy, if I am telling something here that I shouldn't be telling, I apologize in advance, but what he said was, Jeff, I just hope I get to see this thing before I die. Well, he's going to be fine. We're going to get this thing done, and I think he's being blessed by the progress that we're making and the fact that this is bigger than he ever dreamed. But we do eventually want to finish the project. So
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Guthrie, jump in here.
Well, again, I think Jeff's done a great job of, just listen to the different organizations and companies that have jumped right into this thing. Everybody wants to figure out a way to make a difference. That's what I've learned over these last 4 years or so, in different things that I've been involved with Mary Coleman at the City of Promise, Abundant Life, University of Virginia. One of the things that little tidbit that Jeff didn't share is that H3 baseball, the bylaws of H3 baseball, are written by the president of the university, who was a law school professor at that point. President Ryan, kind of like Thomas Jefferson with the Declaration of Independence. We've got President Ryan having written the bylaws for H3 baseball, and then Jeff has an incredible relationship with Coach O'Connor. Coach O'Connor is an incredible individual, as all the coaches at UVA are, and so it's just so exciting. And for me, I think the thing I get most excited about is that Wall of Fame, and that whole aspect of starting in the parking lot at Burley, and walking all the way through into Washington Park and up to Preston Avenue. Just think about that. Jeff talked about that, but the synergy of the fact that it's county and city and the university all within walking distance, the 4 or 5 football field length, and that you can go from one to the next, and that just, to me, it symbolizes the community coming together. David Sloan had a thing going for a while where we were meeting in Washington Park on once a month on a Monday afternoon, and guys like Garwin DeBerry were there, and Dom Starja was there, and David and Olivia and Kathy Zencraft, and all these people just wanting to get together and talk about how can we make a difference, and just right down the hill is where this is going to happen, and so I'm just excited about it, and look forward to being in whatever help I can be.
Well said. Well said.
I'd love to throw in 2 program plugs, if we will. These are utilizing Burley's facility. We think we'll get more people to the program. Mike read an article in the New York Times not too long ago about a gentleman who had been shut in during COVID. And what he decided was he needed to get out and interact with more people, and he wanted to do it around the game of baseball. So Mike and I, along with a couple of my board members, have put together a program. We're going to launch it in late March, and we're going to call it something like Just a Catch, right? Where people, they don't have to have an affiliation with Burley or H3, can just show up at the Burley field, probably at 5 o'clock on Wednesday evenings. We'll have balls there, we'll have gloves there, and just have a catch.
That's awesome.
As a chance just to be able to interact with people that you don't interact with on an everyday basis. And for some of these folks who've really been hurt by COVID and being able to interact with one another, we think it's just going to be a nice additive program. So
I love everything about this, Michael. We have Nathan Walton in the house, Michael Guthrie, and I want to get your take here on some Abundant Life Ministries as we weave Nathan in the broadcast. We are, after he described that walk of fame, I was like, all right, I see why Michael's doing this. I see why he's connecting with us. I see why he suggested this telethon, because that walk of fame and how he put it was one aspect of what this community could need to help heal. Why don't we do an Abundant Life Ministries perspective? And if we can, so Nathan Walton is here. Judo, why don't we do this? Do you have your phone with you, Nathan?
I do.
Okay, I'll give you a headset. So Nathan is going to be about 10 or 15 seconds behind from what he's hearing from us. But Michael, Abundant Life Ministries and what they mean to this community from your standpoint.
So let's just segue from what we're doing at Burley to Abundant Life. Now, Abundant Life's been around for 25 years. It was started by the church that I helped found back in the 70s, Trinity Presbyterian. It was started there, and it's continued to grow. And the segue is this: Abundant Life is focused around the Prospect neighborhood, Cherry Avenue, Prospect Avenue, Orangedale Drive, Fifth Street, and even to the point of Fifth Street, just down the hill from a couple of houses that Abundant Life now owns, and that we've been blessed with, is land that we gave to the city, or gave to Habitat to build homes. So right down the hill from this is Habitat and people being provided housing and things like that. But think about this for a minute. As you walk up Prospect and down whatever that street is that gets you to Cherry Avenue and across, it's the same thing. You're walking from the city into the university. And just last night, the city council voted to approve the Cherry Avenue small district.
Small area plan.
Small area plan. Abundant Life was very involved with that. Nathan spoke last night at that. Cora and Abundant Life board members were very active. Matt Gillikin, who you and I are good friends with, Jerry, incredibly involved in that. And the whole point is because it's a community that we can help. And so guys like Richard and Angel Firo, who live in Orangedale and are involved with Abundant Life, they live in Orangedale because they want to be involved in that community. And it's the same thing with Jeff walking through Rose Hill and in those areas, and people wanting to have people involved with their community in a positive way. And so for me, it was just a really easy segue to go from Burley Varsity Club and doing what's going on there to realize their dreams, to Abundant Life, to helping people from, school tutoring to financial planning to home ownership. That is where things change, is when people get a better education and get an opportunity to buy a house that they can move into, build equity, and hand that down to somebody else. The problem is that because of a lot of crummy stuff, it started a lot later than it should have. I was listening to something even just this morning where they talked about 2.3 or 2.4% of all businesses in America are African American owned. That's not right. And there's a lot of good things going on in there, more and more, but it's because it didn't happen soon enough. But it goes back to that analogy of the fact that when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago, or in this situation, 400 years ago, right? But when's the next best time to plant a tree?
Right now.
Today, right now.
Yeah.
So that we can make a difference, that what happened in the past isn't going to happen, and that we can help different people have an opportunity that they didn't have before.
That's why I love these guys, is they're men of action and people of action, tangible performance. Nathan Walton's in studio. One more question for you, Mr. Walton, and what he means to this community, Michael Guthrie. Give us some perspective here.
Well, Nathan and I have just gotten to know each other for the last couple of years. I unfortunately didn't know him when he was the student extraordinaire over at the university getting his doctorate. But Abundant Life was lucky enough to bring him on as our executive director 2 or 3 years ago now. Nathan, I'm old, so it may have been 3 by now. But Nathan actually started as a volunteer when he was at UVA with Abundant Life, tutoring. And I think he actually was a Strive mentor. And so here's a guy who, came to the university, wanted to make a difference, got involved with Abundant Life. Little did he know in doing his doctorate that he'd end up being the executive director of this organization. He's doing a fantastic job, and we're really, really grateful to have him leading the way.
Michael, thank you. Thank you for setting everything up here on this show. He made everything happen on this show, and that's why we're chatting with these fellas. We're going to welcome Nathan to the program now. All the best, and thank you very much for joining us, Michael.
My pleasure. I look forward to listening in. And Jeff and Nathan, thank you guys for all you do. And Jerry, thank you for what you and Judah do, and Keith and Yona sponsoring the show to get these kind of messages out, because I think it's making a huge difference.
Thank you, Michael. You have a good day, Michael Guthrie, CEO of Roy Wheeler. Nathan, you're on camera here. You're live. Michael Guthrie had some very nice things to say. Jeff Burton has ties to Abundant Life Ministries. We'll get to those ties as well. How about before we do that, just an introduction to everybody first, you, and then Abundant Life.
Great. So my name is Nathan Walton. I wear a couple of different hats. I'm the pastor of formation and discipleship at Shaw's Living Church. and I'm also executive director of Abundant Life Ministries. As Michael mentioned earlier, my background is actually in the academy, so I like to tell people I was a student from the age of 5 to the age of, 29 or so. And so I finished up my PhD in 2018, and the same month that I defended my dissertation, I actually took the job with Abundant Life and began working. So I remember defending my dissertation and then helping to lead a board meeting that night. And so just to tell you a little bit about Abundant Life has been around for quite a while, and this is our 25th anniversary year. And so just been a part of the community in Prospect, which is a neighborhood very close to Cherry Avenue, and just engage in the work of walking alongside residents. So we're a ministry that's invested in holistic community development in the Prospect neighborhood, and that really looks like thinking about everything from, education support to helping folks to purchase their first home, to helping folks to move up the socioeconomic ladder in terms of entrepreneurship and being able to provide for their families. And so we do a range of things in a given week. It's COVID now, right? So programming looks a little bit differently. But we have educational programs where we partner with the schools from Johnston Elementary to Walker and Buford as well to provide, right now, virtual learning support for students. We also have mentoring programs for kids from kindergarten all the way throughout high school. And then we also have adult programs primarily for adults in the neighborhood who are pursuing financial self-sufficiency. And so we do a range of things, and these are all really a means towards an end, and that end is to walk alongside others as they take the next steps towards an abundant life for themselves and for their families and for their communities. And so we're just really grateful to be partnering with the community in that way, and also really grateful for all the partnerships in the city that have helped to make this work possible. And I think the pandemic has really shown the power of these different community organizations coming together to really make a difference.
I want to talk about the pandemic and the impact it's had potentially on Abundant Life. I want to bring Jeff Burton in the mix here. Thoughts on the conversation and maybe the ties that your family has?
Yeah, so we used to be members at the church that Michael is an elder at, Trinity Presbyterian Church in town, and that was when we got started working with Abundant as a volunteer on occasion. As part of my family's Christmas traditions, we have always showed up to work the Christmas store that they have each year and to walk alongside some of the small kids that have come through there that are getting to buy presents for their family members through the generosity of people that support Abundant Life. My oldest son's best friend in high school at the Covenant School was Joseph Payne, who his parents were involved with Abundant Life for a decade, So I've got several good friends right now on the board at Abundant Life, and so I just feel like it is one great organization doing wonderful work in this community and is making a real tangible difference. So I've always admired it, haven't had an abundant amount of time to spend on it, but any moment that I get, I love being involved.
Nathan Walton.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's it's another reminder of other things we do in terms of not just our week-to-week programming, but some of those community events like the Christmas store where youth are able to submit guest wish lists for their friends, for family members, and then other partners in the community help to make those things possible. And so it's really helpful because it's connected to our elementary program.
Yes.
And basically what's happening is during the year there are incentives for improving in their educational performance or improving their behavior, and they earn these things called blue bucks. And so they can spend these blue bucks at the Christmas store to get those gifts. And so it's both helping them to get things for someone else and think about other people during this season of Christmas, but also it's helping with financial management, right? Like they're learning about, okay, I have 900 blue bucks, but that particular toy costs 1,000, so I need to figure out how to make this work.
No, it's great. It's great. It reminds me, we run a program called the Baseball Bunch where middle school students, still under the influence of their parents, partner with elementary age kids in a one-on-one relationship for an entire year so that the middle school kids learn how to invest in someone else before they get into the high school years and they're starting to make decisions for themselves. All we're trying to do is train up children in the way they should go, right? Whether it's financial management or study habits or investing in others so that one day they'll be the doers in the community, right?
That's exactly right.
Doing good works. So
that's exactly right.
COVID's impact on what you're doing, on the organization. We've had a fair amount of folks that are in your shoes, executive directors, heads of nonprofits. They said it's tough sledding. One of the things that's tough sledding, and with the revenue down, with the budget, there's not a lot to allocate to nonprofits. How can we help? What's the impact COVID has had? Where do we stand?
Yeah, so those are all great questions. And so in terms of the impact, it's definitely shifted a lot of things for us, from going from having an after-school program every day of the week to then realizing, there are kids who are trying to access their synchronous learning with the schools during the morning hours. So how do we support them so that they can just attend class virtually? Yes. And so that process began actually by reaching out to community members and parents to get a sense for, what exactly are the needs that are there, right? What times are you not available to supervise your child, if there are any times? If we were to set up a virtual learning center, do you need transportation, right? And so we were able to partner with the local church, Christ Episcopal Church, to basically set up and create an entire learning center for about 30 elementary school students there. Then
you created a school.
Yeah. And then partnered with Beaufort Middle School for our 5th through 8th grade students. So another probably 20 kids there. And so operating these multiple centers, and between that and also the Christmas store you mentioned, they're kind of examples of how we tried to find multiple opportunities for people to get involved, right? So you have institutional partnership where someone might say, hey, you can use our space, but we also have volunteers, right, who say, hey, I can give up an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours of my time to walk alongside a youth as they're trying to continue to learn. And so those are some of the ways that people partner with us in non-financial ways. Now, COVID obviously affects finances, too, at a number of levels. I will say one thing that was beneficial about the last year is that we were able to receive some PPP funding, federal funding, so that's been great. And so that's helped with some of the shortfall. But yeah, we always appreciate the financial contributions of individuals as well who COVID hasn't affected as much financially.
How do you do, I have this question for the executive directors that come on the show. So much of nonprofit fundraising is in-person events, so people can see your tangible hard work and the benefit you've done for the community. What do you guys do now?
Yeah, so COVID hit very early spring last year. We had our annual summer banquet planned for June.
Did you get the March Madness event in? Because that was canceled, right? Because the ACC tournament was canceled. They normally do a
how do you
March Madness tournament.
Yeah, everything changed.
Yeah.
So we actually did an online kind of raffle fundraiser with some memorabilia. And then for the summer banquet, we did a whole virtual banquet. So not a banquet, a virtual event. Okay. And so I was outdoors with folks, and we were doing an interview and doing some presentations that we pre-recorded. And so had to have a whole production around that. And so it was a huge
it's
adjustment.
hard.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, very hard. But people are flexible, and I think the irony of this whole season is it's been hard, but it's hard for everybody. And so if we're having to adjust, people understand there's a technical glitch. It's COVID. That's what's happening, and we just bear with one another in that time. And so I've been encouraged by just the support, not even necessarily just financial support or just showing up to volunteer for something, but just us just all being in it together and having empathy for one another, right. And being able to be okay if things don't go perfectly, because we're all just trying to take it one day at a time. And so it's left me really hopeful about what it would look like coming out of the season, because someday, somehow, we will come out of this.
Amen, amen. Jump in here.
100%. I was literally texting with a mom of one of my players this morning about how the season has taught us grace in a way that we might not have come by so naturally pre-COVID.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that
Your buddy Todd Proctor's giving you props right now.
I love Todd. He has trained my boys. Best hitting instructor in town, in my opinion, and a great man. So here's what I'm a detail-oriented guy. I stamp details matter on the back of T-shirts for the teams that I watch. I want kids who don't come by details naturally to learn how important details are. And we could go into what those details are. But the reality is COVID has thrown a wrench in all of our plans. And I generally believe that we're all just doing the best that we can. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need to push kids or parents or whomever who is still struggling in that area. But I do think we can show a little more grace. Maybe grace, maybe, the opportunity for folks to not feel miserable about themselves because they didn't get it all right the first time, right? I need grace because I screw up all the time. Our society needs grace because we got a lot wrong in the 400-year history of our community. Kids need grace on a minute-by-minute basis. So I just think that COVID has taught me that I just need to relax at times. It doesn't mean I need to change my standards, but I need to be a hair more patient with everybody and myself in terms of getting things done exactly like I might dream them to be.
Well said.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I feel similarly in terms of the lessons that the season has taught us. I'm an Enneagram 3. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Enneagram, but they're known as the achievers, so they're always trying to accomplish things.
Right.
And the pitfalls to Enneagram 3s too.
Hence your schooling and your degrees, right? I mean, this dude's got degrees.
No, but
right
here's
now.
the thing. Here's the thing. Like with COVID, you realize you can't accomplish everything. You can accomplish maybe one thing in a given day.
That's right.
And I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and so when things first hit, I would have a list in my head of here's what I want to get done. But we didn't have childcare for a season, and so actually you had our nanny on here, and she's saved our lives.
Yeah.
But it was kind of this reminder of it's okay to slow down. It's okay to give yourself grace, as you mentioned, and take it one step at a time and one day at a time.
That's right.
And as a ministry at Abundant Life, we talk a lot about long-term relationships and kind of walking alongside residents over a period of time and setting long-term goals and that type of thing. And so in many ways, this season has disciplined us to try to live that out in a new way.
Yeah.
To say, okay, so we have a strategic plan of the goals we want to accomplish, but okay, well maybe they won't be accomplished in the same timeline.
That's right.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
And I think that's been the lesson of this moment.
The show is streaming to Twitter, and we're getting tweets and DMs, and this is a good one. Throw this to both you guys. Fellas, Jerry, can you ask the fellas this question? Both these guys have influence over the next generation. How has the next generation managed with COVID from a pros and cons standpoint? That's a great question. Ooh. A lot to unpack there. You can go in a lot of different directions with that one. How about we'll go Nathan first. Just an example, pro and con, and what we can learn from it perhaps.
Oh, wow. From the next generation and how they managed it?
Yeah, like how children are managing COVID.
Yeah,
because I'm always so impressed with how kids manage the day-to-day thing. If we give them some leeway and some opportunity to rise, from my experience, they do. But you're much more in the thick than I am.
No. I think you're right. I mean, the one thing I've learned from youth is that I've underestimated their resilience in the midst of this. And to me, that's been instructive for me as an adult and for other people I've been around, because you realize, man, if they can push through, if they can sit in front of a screen,
we can too.
Yeah, we can figure out a way to make it work, right? I think what's interesting is going into the season, prior to COVID, the challenge with kids is often they want to be in front of screens a lot, right? And so it's been this weird reversal where now they're getting Zoom fatigue, and so it's oh, okay, this is different. But even in the midst of that, they push through, and so I think they've set a really helpful example for us in terms of what resilience can look like. And I think the other thing that kids have actually reminded me of is just the power of play. And this began before COVID, but just seeing kids and realizing, because our virtual learning school is also right beside McGuffey Park, and so just to see them, and to want to get off the screen and to be out and just enjoy life, and I think that's part of what COVID teaches us. It teaches us the value of stopping, actually going outside, enjoying what's around you, enjoying being present to your body, to yourself, to your surroundings. And I think that long term, that if we have habituate practices that kind of bring that into the daily rhythms of our lives, I think we'll be more joyful people. Yeah. And that's why kids have so much joy. It's because they stop and actually smell the roses. Yeah. And there are a lot of roses to be smelled if we just open up our eyes to what's around us.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And the problem with going second when
the
question is, what do I follow up there? Here's what I would say though. I think that humans are made for relationships. And I think relationships are hard through a computer screen. I think the tendency in our society is towards screens and towards social media, and that's a fight that we had started pre-COVID. I think COVID has magnified that. And so as I watch my own children, who are, two of them are in college, one's in high school, and I watch these children that I am helping on the ball field, what I'm realizing is there are opportunities to develop in relationships, to be challenged by their friends, I mean, that's been strained. And so we're going to have some makeup here, what are these kids, are they going to be stunted at all when they come out of this season where they haven't been in school for a year? They haven't been regularly on a ball field. They haven't learned visual cues because we've been living through masks. I just don't know what that's going to look like long term. I do know that as we can get back out on a ball field, or as I can give a face-to-face tour of the Burley facility, things are dramatically different than what we do through a Zoom meeting. Zoom is great. I'm glad that it's here. The technology was there beforehand, and we just didn't utilize it enough. But I can't wait for the day that we can get back to one-on-one interactions.
Human connection.
Human connections. We're made for relationships.
I missed that too. Thoughts?
No, I think it's right. And you've got me thinking about like what will it look like coming out of this, and what are things that need to be different, and what have we learned from this season that we can then continue in the next season. And it kind of reminds me of, I think what you mentioned about like education, and it reminded me of what my thoughts about public health. So I think both education and public health are areas where COVID has actually pushed us as a society to think about, how do we put more resources in these areas that are vital to us being able to succeed as a society?
That's right.
And so like I would love for us as a city, as a country, to keep those things as high priorities for us. Because I think if we value those things, then the rest of our lives will actually go much better.
Public health, specifically, what do you mean with the
So just at a very basic level, think about the amount of funding that's been given to develop these vaccines, right? Like my wife has an MPH, right? And so I had heard about public health, generally for the last couple of years. We've talked about her in her studies, but like didn't really know a ton about it. Or about the role that it plays and how it affects all the other things happening around us. Yeah. And so now I think public health has become so much more of a part of our regular conversation.
Yes.
And it's also affected the amount of funding that institutions are allotting towards those types of initiatives.
Yeah.
And so if we keep that as a priority and also keep addressing the opportunity gap in schools as a priority, I think that's going to pay dividends for us down the road in a lot of ways.
Our lives, our circumstances dictate where our resources generally go. And I don't want to make a political statement here, but, we all need to reset periodically. And you don't wish a COVID pandemic upon anyone, but if it's done anything, it's allowed us to sit back and appreciate what we need to be spending resources on, right? I mean, there are people that do not have homes. There are people who do not have food. COVID has probably magnified those things. But even as we prepare for the next pandemic, what resources are we going to put into public health so that we are better prepared next time than we were in March of last year?
Jim Nafaro on Twitter for Nathan. Jerry, please give us more information on your guest, Nathan. I love what he's saying on the program, and more information on Abundant Life, please. And thank you. I love the show.
Oh, great.
That's for you.
Yeah, I'd love to share more. I have tons more. We don't have time for all of it. But so Abundant Life, as I mentioned, is a community development nonprofit located in the Prospect area of Fifeville, which is very close to Cherry Avenue. And we do a lot of work related to educational support for youth, financial literacy support for adults, also mentoring support for people of all ages. And so if you're interested in being involved, the first thing to do is to check out our website, which is charlottesvilleabundantlife.org. You can learn more there about what we do. If you want to get involved to volunteer, or we host these things called table talks, which are basically open house sessions. Now they're called tent table talks because they're outdoors for COVID reasons. But it's a great chance just to hear more about what we're doing. We answer any questions you have. And I as a ministry, we pride ourselves on trying to give multiple points of access for people if they want to get connected to us. And we want to make that access easy, right? So if you're someone who wants to donate, there's ways to do that. If you want to volunteer on a weekly basis, there are ways to do that. If you want to help out, there are people who help out with Christmas Store. Like you mentioned, someone I was talking to recently who helped out for 15 consecutive years. And that's a thing that she and her family did, right? And so it's once a year, but that's a consistent thing that blesses us and is a benefit to our family as well. And so there are multiple points of connection and ways to get involved. Other folks get involved not necessarily by serving, but by connecting us with other institutions in the city, being a liaison, because our whole city will thrive more the more that we collaborate as nonprofits and as community organizations. Yeah. So it's a ton of different ways to do that.
Love it. I love it. Nathan Walton is the man. Gentlemen, how about we close with this platform of hope here at I Love Seville? A vulnerable time for all of us, and you guys both have a way with your words and messages of inspiration. You got a lot of folks watching. We'll give you the first go here, and Nathan's got the second slide. But anything you want to say to everybody that's watching as we close the program here in Charlottesville and Central Virginia?
I was giving a tour last week to Juan Diego Wade. I don't know if folks around Charlottesville know Juan.
Love that guy.
I hope so.
I love Juan.
Love that guy.
Juan Diego, and I hope
He's running for city council for those that don't know.
I hope people get behind his campaign. He's got a fantastic heart. And what we were talking about was the generosity of the world at large, and this community is amazing. But oftentimes people do not know how to help. And so I think most of us need a way to get to people that can provide that assistance. It doesn't matter to me whether it's the kids that live in the Prospect community or the impoverished that are being helped by the Haven or the burly athletes from the 1950s and 60s that we're trying to honor. I think that those of us who know how to get things done and have access to resources need to be generous with our resources and be on the lookout for those who don't ask easily. Because there are a lot of people in this community that for pride reasons or access reasons don't know how to raise their hand and say, I need help. But I do think that there are people in this community that want to help. They just need to be aware of the causes. So appreciate you. Appreciate the fact that you're here highlighting a couple of great things that are going on in this community amongst many things. So if you need help, reach out in whatever way that you can. And those of us who can provide help, we need to be aware of it.
Thank you, Jeff Burton. Well said, Jeff Burton. Nathan Walton, to close the show.
Yeah, the only thing I would say that comes to mind for me is I think that when we recognize that when our most vulnerable neighbors thrive, we also thrive, we'll take a lot more positive steps as a community. Because I think oftentimes we can approach these issues of serving the community and being a benefit to the community in ways that act as if it's a zero-sum game. But in reality, we can all actually flourish.
That's right.
Because think about it, everybody has that mentality of how do I really prioritize the success and vitality of someone else's life. If everybody does that, then you're going to be blessed. So you're going to benefit because we're looking out for one another. That's right. And so I think that's my encouragement to myself and to everyone else, that we have to ask that question, not just what do we need or what will make us successful in however we define success, but how do we figure out what it means for other people to thrive, recognizing that we're going to benefit in the process.
It's a great show today.
It's great.
A lot of moving parts on today's show. Judah Wickower, you did a heck of a job today. Judah Wickower is the director. You always do great work. Seriously.
Hey, I learned from the best.
Nathan Walton, guys. Jeff Burton is the man as well. Please get involved, volunteer, donate, spread the word. And I think if there's a common message from today's show is in Charlottesville, like any community, a rising tide's good for all ships. Right. So we go about our life kind of thinking this golden rule mentality. I think the community is going to come out better. And why don't we close at that? For Judah, for Jeff, for Nathan, my name is Jerry Miller. This is Real Talk, presented by the Yes Team Realtors, the I Love Seville show, 1 hour and 10 minutes away, guys. Have a good morning. Take care.
Thank you.
Excellent work.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent work, Jeff Burton.
That was fantastic. Thanks.